welcome once again. I'm William Rader, the co-founder of Artisan Tarot, and I am joined here today with Dr. Jeremy Weiss from the Temple of Marian. So he's right here. I'm also joined by Z-Manzilla right here as well. And in the Trumps course that's taking place in September, they're going to be joining us and giving their advice, sharing their wisdom with us. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to bring them in on board with us here during this time. So Z-Manzilla, you might have seen from TikTok fame. He's got over 200,000 followers on TikTok, and he does really cool readings with a deck of cards, which he might just chat about for a few minutes later. We've also got Dr. Jeremy Weiss from the Temple of Marian, who publishes great books on Jewish magic. And so we'll give you all links for all of that as we progress as well. So thank you both for joining me here today. Oh, and also I'm going to spotlight you, Marilyn, because she was really also instrumental in helping us write the material that is in the course. So I also want to thank Marilyn for joining us here today as well. It's good to see you again. Okay, so let's go right into this. And I really have three goals for us today. The first goal is for us to hopefully teach you something that when you go, I guess, later on today or go throughout the week, you can have something that you can add to your readings right now. So that's the primary goal, is that you can learn something during this presentation that you can immediately put into practice. The second thing that we're going to do is show you example readings, and we're going to show you live readings of how you can use these cards to give advice or to read with the cards. And the third thing that I want us to do is to have fun. So those are the three things that I really want to do today with all of you. So I'm going to start here with just a little bit of the history of our company, what we're up to, and we're going to give you a little bit of a background history of the Tarot de Marseille. So right now, we've got three decks that we've produced, that we've recreated or restored from traditional Tarot de Marseille decks. Now, the Tarot de Marseille decks are the original French tarot that we believe came from Italy. And so you'll notice as we go through these that these cards are actually, they have French names, which is really fun in my opinion. So the first deck that we released, this is the Nicholas Conver deck, and this is from 1760. And this is considered to be a type 2 deck. And we're going to go into this a little bit later here. But this is considered a type 2 deck. So just remember this, the Nicholas Conver deck. The next deck we restored was the Jean Noblet deck. And this is a much smaller version. And this is considered to be what we know the very first Tarot de Marseille deck. And this deck is from 1650. And kind of a contemporary of this deck is the Jean Dodel deck. And this deck is from 1701, so just a little bit later than the Jean Noblet deck. And these decks is what our course is going to cover. Now, if you say, I'm not really familiar with the Tarot de Marseille, what is that? I'll share this link later as well, but we actually have a giveaway where we are giving out a Trumps deck. You just have to pay shipping for on our website. And this deck includes all of the trump cards from the Jean Noblet deck. And you might notice that some of this imagery, if you read with the Rider deck already, you might notice that some of this imagery is very similar to the Rider-Waite-Smith cards. And so this is our restoration of the Jean Noblet deck. And so we're going to be talking about this as well. So now that you know a little bit about our restorations and the history of these cards, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and talk to you about our course and teach you some of the material that's inside. Because when I first started trying to learn how to read the cards, it was actually very difficult for me because I was told that you have to, memorize what this means and what this means and what this means. And once you have that stuff memorized, then you lay out the spread and you have to, almost regurgitate those things that you've learned in order to give a reading. And I found for me that just wasn't working, wasn't natural for me to memorize what other people had said and then talk about that And so really what this course is designed to do is to help you think about the cards, think about what they mean, so that you can put your own experiences, that you can put your own life lessons into these cards that you can then share with the people that you're reading for. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So bear with me just for one moment as I pull up this page. Okay, great. So this is inside of our Trump's course. And the reason why I want to show this to you is because I really want to share our approach, my personal approach to reading the cards. And once you purchase the course, you're going to go to your account area here, and you're actually, I need to sign in. That's important. Okay, once you sign in, you're going to see up here at the top the different sections in our Tarot de Marseille Trumps course. Now, the first thing that you're going to get is an online guidebook that really covers the basis for all of the material that we're going to be teaching in the live classes. And this is in 3 sections. First, we talk about the trump cards, how to tell stories, and then how to answer questions. And this is really my approach to reading the cards. And that is first, getting a basic understanding of each trump card. So we go through all 22 trump cards and we explain a little bit about the history, their archetypes, and what they could potentially mean in a reading. And this isn't something for you to memorize and then, give back. It's more for you to have a full understanding of the cards so that when you read with them, you know exactly what those could mean in a reading. And then we're talk about how to tell stories, because I think if you understand how to tell a story, that really is what you need to give a reading. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then we are going to go right into answering questions. And I think from storytelling, understanding how to tell a story, then that transitions into telling that story with a question in mind. And this is really a simple formula that I use when I'm giving readings. So let's go ahead and just pop into the trump cards here. And let's just talk a little bit more about these cards. So as you can see, inside the course, we've got lessons for every single trump card here. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and pop in to one of my favorite cards, and this is the Lover. Now you can see we've got 3 different versions of the same card here. The card on the left is the card from Jean Noblet. This is that small little deck that you saw, so that's how it's represented here. The card in the middle is from the Jean Dodel. That's that deck from 1701, a little bit later than the Jean Noblet deck. And then the card on the right is from the 1760 Nicholas Conver deck. Now, if you'll remember, I said there's a type 1 and a type 2 deck. The first 2 cards are the type 1 pattern. And you can see some differences in this. For example, Cupid here is blindfolded. And if you look at the Conver deck, Cupid's no longer blindfolded. And so depending on what deck you get, there's going to be some differences in these. And so what we are really trying to do is show you each one of these cards so that you can understand what they look like. But not only that, I think it's a great exercise to practice reading with different cards. Because in one card with Cupid being blind has a different meaning, potentially, than a Cupid that can fully see what's going on. And I think William Shakespeare has this wonderful quote from A Midsummer Night's Dream, which is, "Love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind, and therefore is winged Cupid painted blind." And I think this is during that time, this is a great way to kind of memorize potential meanings for this card. And so we've given you quotes with every single card, so you go, oh, this is an interesting way to look at this card. So now let's go into a little bit more detail about the Lover, because I see this is one of my favorite cards because this is the Lover singular. And a lot of Rider-Waite-Smith decks, it's the Lovers, which is a plural form of the Lover. But here we see this as a singular form. You can also see that this is a little bit ambiguous. And what I mean by that, it could be that we've got this middle gentleman here, And perhaps his mother is on the left, who's giving his hand away in potential marriage to the person on the right. Or you could also look at this and say, well, this could also be a decision that he's got to make between two people. And a lot of times this might be vice and virtue. You can see where the person on the right's hand is covering the heart, and we've got another hand in a lower region of the body. And so here you can see maybe this is a choice between vice and virtue. Perhaps also, with love being painted blind, perhaps this is also a card about fate, where it's really up to fate to decide the outcome of this. Is it, maybe this person in the middle really likes the person on the left side, but Cupid's pointing the arrow in the other direction. Maybe it's not up to him. And so you can see just with this one card, how we can potentially tell so many stories. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, right, of these stories that we can start telling with these cards. And what I'm doing here is I'm looking at the image, I'm paying attention to what's happening within the image, and then I'm basing my story on what's occurring. And so I think whenever you're reading the cards, if you're able to provide evidence for what you see, then your sitter, your querent, whatever you'd like to call them, they're going to be able to better understand and relate to what you're saying as you're reading the cards. Now, what I just talked about here, if we go down, all of this information is right here. We try to keep this concise for you so you're not overwhelmed with too much information, but we also include links where if you want to learn more about Cupid, if you want to learn more about metamorphoses and Ovid and how these things are related, all of this material is here for you. And then keywords, some people like keywords just to help them think about possible meanings once again. So here we've got divided, choices, maybe a confusion, false love, commitment, advisors, divine intervention, romance. And so these keywords are once again almost starting points for you to start creating your own meanings. And so once again, my system in reading is first understanding a little bit about the history of the card and what's involved inside the card about Cupid, about potentially what's happening. And then I start paying attention to what's inside of the card. And then also here, we've got comparisons for you. Once again, talking about how is Noble different than Conver? How is Dodal different than Conver? What are these differences? And then we go in and we talk about questions for you to consider. And really these questions are here because we don't want you to just spit back information that you've memorized. We really want you to consider what these cards are saying. So for example, we say, is the Cupid's arrow pointed at the best option? Right? And when you're in a reading, this might come up and say, is this really the right person for you? Is the arrow pointing in the right direction? What does that mean? What are the people who interact with touching gestures? Who are they? In just a moment ago, I said, oh, maybe it's his mother giving away the hand of marriage. Or maybe these are two people that are competing, right? And so just by telling those stories, those people now change. And so this section really is to make you think about the cards, because that's really what we want you to do. And I think that's how you're going to be able to bring in your own intuition in reading these cards. And I think that's really, really important, which is why we give you the history and then make you think. And so this is what we're going to be talking about in our course. So now let's go ahead and talk about the storytelling element of this, because once you understand the cards themselves and you have the background information and you start paying attention and you maybe create a little bit of a story with each one of the cards so you understand what's happening, I think it's then important to understand how to tell a story. And so here we have different sections, once again, where we're going to be explaining the basics of storytelling. And here we have the hero's journey, which is where a traveler goes on an adventure, overcomes a conflict and comes home with some advice, right? And I think this really plays a role when you're reading the cards. What do people want? They want the cards to tell them advice. They want them that they want that knowledge, that experience that is learned in that story that you tell. And so understanding this hero's journey, I think, is really important. We talk about card spreads and different ways that you can lay the cards out to say, for example, that one that we probably all know is past, present, future. Each position of where the card is laid now represents something, an element where you can now expand upon your story. And then we'll also break down here the elements of a story. And so here we break down, for example, who, what, when, where, and why. Those are the elements of the story. And once you start to understand that, you can then start integrating that into your readings. And then down here, we give you examples where we break down like really concisely the examples. And I'm not going to go into this in detail because it's very long. But here we've got example one with these three cards. Then you can just see here the setting, the characters, the plot, the conflict, the theme, the lesson, right? And so you can look at these yourself, and then we do the same spread again, and we say, okay, let's look at this at a different way. And so you can pause here and you can say, okay, how would I tell a story? What kind of story would I tell? And then you can see, okay, well, here's the second example, and this is how they told the story. And so we really are trying to give you these examples so that you can say, oh, this is how I told the story, and this is how it's different from their story. And this is how they did it with each section, and this is how I did it. Because I think, once again, and I can't stress this enough, but understanding how to tell these stories, I think, is really vital in being able to read with the cards. And so once you understand how to tell stories with the cards, and we're going to actually in the classes, we're going to be breaking up into groups. We're going to have a 3-card spread, and we're going to just say, hey, create some stories with the cards. And then we'll come back together and we'll share those stories with each other. And we've done this in the past with Marilyn and with Jeremy, and it's really fun to hear different people's stories and how they came up with those stories. And I think the more stories that you hear, which is one of the reasons why we're going to do these readings here soon, is the more your mind thinks like, oh, I wouldn't have seen it from that perspective. Oh, I wouldn't have seen it from this way. And understanding that and seeing that just helps expand your thinking as well. Because I think the best way to learn how to read the tarot is to read the tarot, right? You can read, I don't know how many books there are of the tarot out there, but I think practicing is really is going to take you up to that notch. So let's go ahead now and talk about these answering questions, because in this section we talk about how to give, my computer just froze, sorry about this, here we go. We talk about how to give good advice, because that's really important. You want to be right when you give advice, and you want to make sure that you're telling people, you're acting like a friend to them. So we talk about that. We talk about how to know your audience. Who are these people that you're reading for? Because I think a 16-year-old who's just turned 16, who's maybe just in high school, is going to get a very different reading than a married man with 3 kids, right? You have to think, okay, who's my audience and who am I reading for? We're also talk a little bit about emergencies. If there's a situation that comes up that maybe you can't handle, what do you do? And I think this is a very important thing to know, is how do you handle that stuff? What do you do? And then we give you 12 examples here, and we're actually going to go through one here in a moment. We give you 12 examples of, these are real readings that I've given in the past to sitters. And so you can see here, we've got a whole range of questions. And what I'd like to do now, if that's okay with everybody, if it's fine, I want to go into one of these and we're going to practice together. I'm going to show you a question, and then I'm going to show you how I interpreted this, so you can see how I read the cards. So let's pop right into, this one looks good. Let's go to Jean's marriage here. And this is the spread. This is from our Nicholas Conver deck. And here we have, hopefully everybody can see this, here we have the Hermit, the Chariot, and Strength, if we were using the Rider-Waite-Smith terminology here. So these are the 3 cards. We've got the Hermit, we've got the Chariot, and we've got Strength. So here's the scenario, because I think when you're reading the cards, you have a sitter in front of you, and you want to know a little bit about their life, about what's going on. I think it's very hard to read if someone just gives you a question and you don't know anything about that person. So here's the scenario. Gene has been trying to save his marriage for the last year. Despite what he tries, he and his wife constantly argue. He feels there are not many options left to save it. So these are the cards that come up. His question is, will my marriage end? So that's the question. And so I'm just going to pause for a moment and just let you think about this and about how you might answer this. And then I'm going to go through this and give you my analysis and then how I would answer this. So we'll just pause for a moment. And the question once again is, will my marriage end? Okay, good. Hopefully that's, sometimes readings, the answers will come right to you. Sometimes it takes a little bit more time, and that's okay. So the question is, will my marriage end? And immediately when I see this spread, I see the chariot there in the middle with two horses pulling in opposite directions. And when I see this, this reminds me of the marriage that he's talking about. He feels like they're going in two different ways. They're pulling in different directions. And so for me, I would say that the marriage is represented by the horses. You've got one going one way and you've got one going the other way. And what's really interesting about this spread that came up is we've got the hermit, who's a male figure, and we've got the strength, who's a female figure. So immediately I thought, okay, well, this person on the right represents the man in the relationship, and the person on the got backwards here. The person on the left is the man in the relationship, and the person on the left is the female in the relationship. And so immediately I when I look at this, I go, okay, well, that makes sense. We've got the man over here, we've got the female over here, and obviously they're being pulled apart. And so just by looking at this, this would be my analysis of this reading. Now let's start to go into, we've got the conflict here, which is the horses pulling apart. Now, what is the hermit doing? Like his archetype would be someone who looks within themselves for an answer. Someone who might go off by themselves, take time for themselves, right? And we've got strength. And if you look at strength, it's almost like she's trying to quiet this beast, right? That's within her. And so putting these together, I would see that the man needs to take time for himself to understand what he really wants in a relationship. Because it seems like to me that the lady here isn't really allowed to be herself, isn't allowed to be the person that she wants to be. It looks like she's holding back, right? And so I'm just going to scroll down here and show you here. So the analysis here is the horses in the chariot represent you and your wife. If no action is taken, the horses will pull the chariot apart. As the hermit, take time by yourself to understand what you need in a relationship and what compromises you are willing to make. The lady in force has to repress her true nature and is being forced into something that she isn't. And if you look here, a lion is always going to be a lion, no matter what else you want that to be, right? That's never going to change. She is the person she's going to be. And so my answer to this question, will my marriage end, was quite simple. It's yes, if you continue down the path you're on, it's going to end. You can continue trying to force the relationship into something that it really might not be, or you can accept it for what it is and maybe make a compromise in some way, or you can simply walk away. And so that's how I would answer this question, that yes, if you're on the path that you're on, it's going to end. But it's up to you to decide if you want to, what you want to do. And I think this is really important in readings, is to give that person that you're reading for agency to have power over their own lives, right? I don't really like saying, yes, it's going to end, and then that's the end of the reading, right? Like, I don't think that's helpful in any way, right? It's like, that doesn't tell me what I need to do. But I think with this reading here, it gives them steps, right, to take in order to move forward. And I think the step is that you need to be the hermit, decide really what you want, and then from there, here are your options. And hopefully everybody can see here with that spread how I was able to determine that answer. It was by understanding the archetypes of the images and then paying attention to what's going on in the imagery. So I just want to open this up really quickly. Does anybody have any questions about this spread? And this is one of the things that we're going to be doing in the courses too. I was just kind of opening this up to discussion. Jeremy, is there anything that you would like to add to this? Kind of putting you on the spot here.
You totally put me on the spot. No, I mean, this is, you and I have discussed this a lot ad nauseum. I think this is, you know, I mean, we in part wrote a lot of this together, and so I'm in 100% agreement. I would think that Z Manzilla, if I was to pass the ball down the line,
putting him on the spot here.
He probably has something more insightful to say than I do.
Zeman, do you have anything else that you would like to add to this spread? And there are no wrong answers, right? This is like a way, you know, this is how I answered the question at the time. And there's really no right answers as long as you're, I think, giving them good advice. So do you have anything that you would like to add to that, Zeman Zilla? We might need to unmute that. Let me go back here. I'm going to just stop sharing my screen for a moment here. Just go to gallery view.
You muted me first. All right. So
okay, good.
As I've been called upon to say something very profound, I will open with my favorite ice cream is chocolate.
Awesome.
So, which brings me to my point: defy expectations whenever possible. But more to the point of what it is we're trying to say about the cards here. There's a lot of talk of reading the cards, but there is a part of this process that is also very passive. You must also listen to the cards. So one of the things I like about this, because I've had an opportunity to preview your course materials, and I think one of my favorite things about it is it's training, you know, the brain to listen to the cards as well as to speak through the cards. And so, you know, I feel like that you haven't focused, you know, I won't say you haven't focused on it, you haven't come around to that yet, but if I could extol the virtues of this course, the main thing I would say is the method that you are teaching also teaches the reader how to listen. So that's very important, especially in the way that I read. And so I'm looking forward to everybody else learning this wonderful technique. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your input. Yeah, I think listening, you know, to the cards and what they have to say is very important. And that's why also I think that understanding, you know, knowing about the cards is important, because then you can get more out of them if you're familiar with them, right? Because if you look at these cards and you might not notice that the horses are pulling in two different directions, or you might notice that, but if you also look, the faces of the horses are actually looking in the same direction, but they're pulling in different directions. So what might that mean in a reading? And you might look at La Force and you might say, well, maybe she's opening the lion's mouth, maybe she's closing the lion's mouth, or maybe she's just keeping it back from going somewhere. And so by looking at these and listening, and really paying attention, this is what's going to help you become a really good reader, I think.
May I say something a little bit?
Yes.
And interject a little bit, you know. Recently, for everyone out there, I have been I think I've been writing a lot of articles, and one of the articles that has yet to be published, but is coming up in the following weeks, is an article on reading omens. And omens, of course, are just signs and symbols of things around you that you can read and determine something else. So one of the omens was, you know, I took it from the Farmer's Almanac, and it tells you that if a squirrel's tails are extra bushy this year, then it's going to be a bad winter, right? And so from that little actual physical sign, you can make a prediction of the future. And it just occurred to me while you were speaking that the cards themselves contain within them many omens which you are supposed to be reading. And the more omens and things with which symbols with which you are familiar, the easier it will be for you to receive the message, the divine, the inspired message, which answers the question of the querent. So you need to become familiar with symbology and exactly what William is talking about, the idea that you look at those two horses and they're going in different directions, right? That's a symbol, and the mind only, I mean, the brain only sees what the mind recognizes. So you have to be familiar with the fact that, oh my gosh, I have noticed that those horses are going in opposite directions, but I didn't notice that before. So we've taken the time to point out lots of little details so that your mind can chew on what those omens mean.
And I think another omen here is, going back to the chariot, is that the charioteer doesn't have any reins.
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
Either the horses might be really highly trained, right? They can just go, they know where they're going, and they go, and he doesn't need the reins. Or maybe the horses are going crazy right now because he doesn't have the reins, and he needs to have that.
Yeah,
and
he's got to take control.
Yeah, take control. And I think just by that, once again, you could say, well, you need to take control of this situation. Right now, you're letting it, go all over the place. You need to decide where you want it to go, and then you need to take control of that. And so once again, just by noticing that detail, we now can talk further about what this card means. And once again, it's listening and paying attention. Yeah, I think that's a great point to make, Jeremy. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to say about these? I'm going to turn off this share screen just for a moment so we can see anybody else here in the room. Just give me a wave if you have anything else here. Okay, we've got Julie here. I'm going to ask to unmute you, and we're just going to bring you here as well. Hey, Julie.
Hi. When I look at the male and female cards, I don't see them as male or female. I think they're just archetypes. So they don't really have a gender, because I see that even both parties could look within, and that there's strength that needs to be had for forward movement to happen, with the chariot. So it's something that, I mean, the querent is asking for himself, but remember that there's two people in this marriage. It's just not the effort that one individual would have to take, it's both. And you really can't change only happens when people want to change for themselves, they evolve, but as a person, you can't really change. So when I look at the chariot, I always see something as, forward movement, and I usually see it as a positive, but it's all in relation to the question and the cards around it. I see them just going in different directions, and no matter how, it could go either way, but someone's asking for an answer, and just intuitively, I just don't see it surviving. That's just my take.
And that's why I said at the beginning, yes, if you don't do anything, it's definitely going to, right? Yeah. So I do have an answer, right? But then I want them to think a little bit more, on top of that answer. Yeah, I agree with you completely. And actually, you brought up a really interesting point. I was talking with Stephen Bright the other day about these cards, and it looks like we've got someone drawing here on the sky. I don't know what's going on there. Just a moment. That was odd. I was actually talking to Stephen Bright about this, and we were talking about how sometimes the cards do represent gender. Sometimes they don't at all represent gender. And so in this case, when I looked at this, I immediately see, okay, there's a male and a female figure, and that what came to my mind, right? Is this relationship between those two figures. But I think sometimes you look at gestures, you look at movements, you look at what's going on in the cards, and it doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with the gender of the cards. For example, if we were to look at just the gestures here, we've got someone looking towards the left, someone looking straight ahead, and then someone looking towards the right. So it's almost they're doing like this, right? They're moving their head. And so in a reading, you could just say, well, we've got someone who's looking in the past, looking here, and now looking here. What might that mean? And in the same way, we could look at their bodies and we can say, well, we've got someone turned completely towards in this direction. And then they come to the center. Now they're moving forward. And now they're turned to the left. And the gesture is they're almost like stuck. They're unable to move forward because they've got this lion in front of them, right? And so we can just look at the gestures in this, and we don't have to think about the genders that are related to these cards. And so I think, yeah, Julie, I think that brings an excellent point that you can look at those movements, those gestures, where the characters are looking, where the characters are facing, what they're doing. And then that can really be the meat of the reading. And then you can disregard the gender aspects of the cards. And so there's lots of different ways that you can do this. Yes, Zilla.
I was going to say, if there's one thing I can sort of throw in there, we know, of course, that we're talking about an art that's hundreds of years old. And at the time period that it was brought up, gender roles were something that were even played with a little bit. But one of the things I really enjoy about the Tarot de Marseille is that it is of a more secular nature. And if you look at some of the ways that the cards set up how they represent the thing, like, for example, there's an interesting relationship between the Pope and the Popess, the High Priest, and the High Priest. So it's a different name in this. But anyway, what you've got is sort of a four-part separation of the idea of power itself, right? Where you have government power versus religious power, and then separate a second time by traditionally masculine energy versus traditionally feminine energy, right? So it allows you to see those power dynamics. As we kind of grow forward and we sort of better understand that gender, it doesn't play quite as an important role in the nature of life in the universe as it is, or more correctly, that we have gendered forces that didn't need to be gendered, right? This allows us to expand greatly how we interpret the cards themselves. So that's again, one of the reasons why I really like the idea of teaching Tarot de Marseille instead of Rider-Waite, because your Rider-Waite cards are going to have a lot more that gender affiliation, a lot more of that. We're sticking to this old concept kind of way of doing things. Tarot de Marseille is a lot more malleable. You can ignore gender indicators very easily in TDM decks. And so you brought I forget your name, I'm sorry, but you brought up a very good point, which is that remember, at the heart of the cards, these represent concepts. These represent universal concepts. The people on the pictures are only just sort of there to illustrate it. And we're looking at pictures that were drawn 400 or 500 years ago, right? So but the concept is the important part. And as long as you keep that in mind, then yes, absolutely, you can ignore the genders of everybody's on the card and just get to the core of the matter.
Yeah, I'm sorry to jump in there and tag on to Z-Man, but I gotta say, yeah, the cards are, quote, gendered, right? There's the Pope and the Popess. Okay, we've all got that down. All right, but at the same time, we all know that what we're talking about here is our concepts, right? These are conceptual ideas, and masculinity and femininity and these are concepts. That's all, right? We're talking about wisdom. You're talking about strength. And you're talking about yin yang, opposite energies. It doesn't necessarily have to be men and women. We're talking about various energies in the universe, masculine and female energies, that sort of thing. So sometimes, yeah, you got the Pope and you got the Popess, and they're right next to each other. Sure, on your layout. I'm certain that means something, but we're talking about, it doesn't necessarily have to be boy and girl. It can be vanilla and chocolate. It can be yin and yang. It can be the struggle between, you know, I mean, if you see those two cards together, I mean, they're obviously, quote, gendered in the way they're depicted, but they're talking about balanced and, you know, energies that are I don't want to even call it opposing. They're different, you know. They're the yin energy and the yang energy, or whatever, this part and that part.
And moving away from just the gender chat here, because I think Marilyn might have stepped away, but I think she said something really interesting in the chat that I just want to, you know, address, and that is answering a yes/no response takes away from their control. And so I think this is just something to talk about just for questions in general. For me, what excites me is not really yes and no questions. What excites me are questions on how can I do this, or why does this, or, you know, things that, you know, you can really bring out the wisdom that's found within the cards. And she says, you know, she likes that we validated the sitter situation, but a better question would be, is how can I save it? Or what can I do to save my marriage? So instead of saying a yes/no question, it's now how can I? And I think, you know, part of the thing as a reader is we try to get the sitter to give us the best question. And I think, you know, in that reading that I've done, I kind of answered the question, but then I also said, well, how can it be better? And then this is the advice that I would say is, like, do you want it to improve by doing this and this, or you can do this and this? And, you know, Marilyn says here, using these same cards, one might incorporate the use of a quintessential cards, which in this case would be number 5, the Pope, which in turn suggests counseling or mediation might benefit them. And so I think that's a great way to look at this as well, is giving advice, not just saying yes or no, this is going to happen, but how can I improve my marriage? Okay, well, now I think that's, for me, that's an interesting question than just a yes and no question.
I had a case, like an actual case that came up the other day. And I'm also interested to hear how you and Zilla might have handled this, but and other people, and I had a client, and a lot of times, so we're a little bit off track now because we're leaving our sort of formal. William had this all regimented, and now I'm actually coming in and asking everyone for advice. So I'm sorry but that'll be the fun, casual part of this thing. My client, and it's about questions. It's about this whole topic about sometimes what you need to do is, as a sitter, as a reader, is your client actually doesn't have the question that they want really answered in their mind. They may think they want to know whether or not they're going to get an A on that test or something like that. But really what they're asking is something different. And sometimes you have to like drill down, like, why do you want to know if you're going to get an A on that test? Well, if I'm going to get an A on that test, then it means this and then that and then blah, 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 blah. And then that girl will go out with me. And you're like, oh, well, let's talk about that instead, right? So here's what I had. I had a question. Someone who's married, okay? They were married for 30 years. She says to me, something happened with him and his best man before the wedding, and I absolutely have to know if he cheated. And I said, well, you know, how's your marriage now? Marriage now is fine. I just have to know. We have a little bit of struggles, and I just want the truth. And I found that to be a spectacular question, because for me, well, what are you going to do with the answer? Are you going to leave him? How's that going to change anything? Well, you know, are you just going to get mad? I mean, why don't you just assume he cheated 30 years ago and now you've moved on? Like, So I found myself sort of stuck but just by the question, the nature of the question itself, like, who, and I get that the person, the querent, has every right to just say, hey, that's something I want to know. I just want to know. I just want to know for no reason other than I want to know. But what are you going to do with that information if once you know? If you're not going to act on it, who gives a shit? So I was like,
so what did you end up doing?
I'll tell you after you guys answer.
All right, so this is I suppose there's ways to do this in TDM as well, but as some of you may know, I read a thing called the Sesamero. The Sesamero has a couple of cards in it, the Pentagon cards, and whenever those come up, typically it speaks of conceal some information that has been concealed. This information flow through can go both ways. So oftentimes when this card comes up, what you can say in that situation, and there are other cards that can do this, they can say, okay, the deck understands you have asked this question, you want this information. The deck says that this is not its information to give you. This is a situation where you need to get that information from the source for ethics reasons, to build your relationship reasons. There are certain things that an intercessor cannot do for you, because you are trying to subvert a process that has to happen organically. So, like that sounds like a Black Pentagon situation is what we would call that in Sesamero.
What's really interesting, Zilla, is I just chose a card at random to see what it would get, to see how I would answer it. And what's interesting is I got the Popus,
which would be,
and I think this is really interesting.
Yes, because
here she is sitting, and she's just like worried about whatever this is that's going on. And she's got this book in front of her that contains all the knowledge. And so, as you said, go to the source, right? Go to the thing that contains the knowledge, right? If you want the answer to this. And so it's interesting that this card is the card that came up exactly when we were saying, and I think this would be, representative of her just sitting there and worrying, where we've got the source, right?
Yeah, and one of the fascinating things about the Popes card is it's widely speculated it represents Pope Joan, who had a secret of their own to keep for a while. So,
Yeah, Pope Joan, yeah, exact,ly right?
If Pope Joan's secret had been revealed too early, then we wouldn't have the story of Pope Joan, yes? So there's some wonderful new symbolism for you there.
Yeah, that's great. But I just think, isn't tarot just wonderful, right? I can just turn over a card at random and it's exactly, what we're discussing here. What a better card, right, to come up. So Jeremy, I'm curious, that we've kind of talked about this and the card and, going to the source. Maybe this could even mean, right, like she's got this thing to enjoy in front of her, but she's not enjoying it because she's worrying too much about something else that might not even be relevant now, right? She's got this book to enjoy, why are her thoughts going elsewhere? And so I think this might also be able to play into, that answer to the question.
Yeah. I agree. Well, I counseled her that, some things that we will never know, and you just have to move on. And the reason, and the reason that I counseled her in that direction is because of my experience as a physician. And as a physician, I encounter many patients who, let's say you take an x-ray or a CAT scan on them and they're 97 years old because they came in, they're failure to thrive, they're not eating a lot. You do a CAT scan on them and there's a big fucking tumor in their liver, okay? Now, what do you do about it, okay? So your options as a doctor are to do a procedure and take a needle, stick it in the person's liver, take a sample, look at it under the microscope, and say, aha, 100% certainty, this is hepatocellular carcinoma. This is what it is. And a lot of people demand to know what it is. The other option is to say, this patient is 97 years old. They're not a candidate for chemotherapy. They're not a candidate for surgery. All we're going to do for this patient is comfort care. So why would we bother putting them through the risk of sticking a needle into them and taking a sample of their liver, which could result in a small risk, a low risk, but there is a risk of bleeding to death and infection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why can't we just step back and say, walks like a duck, looks like a duck, flies like a duck, has a beak like a duck, sounds like a duck. I'm calling it a duck. And we're just going to live with the uncertainty that it may be not a duck. It could be a very small goose, but either way, it's not good. So I spent more time counseling the querent in this particular case for her to get comfortable with the idea that sometimes there are things that we will never know, and we just cannot allow them to keep us from moving forward. Because even if I told her the card said yes, he cheated, or the card says no, he didn't cheat, she's still gonna wonder. So that's how I handled it. And did I handle it the right way? I don't know.
And actually, I think that kind of brings us back to the point here, Jeremy, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this course, right? Is to have sessions like this and to get feedback and say, hey, in this situation, what would I do? And in this situation, what do I do? Because I think this really prepares you, for the real world and real questions that you're going to be getting. And so just by having this discussion about a breakup, maybe you're going to get a question right like that. And now, or about someone cheating, right? Maybe you'll get a question like that. And now you have more tools in your toolbox on how to address that. And that actually brings us right into, I think, the reading portion, if that's okay with you, Zilla, if that's okay with you, Jeremy. We're just going to go right into that. Now, I didn't write those down, but I do believe
I wrote
for you, Zilla, you wrote it down? Okay, good. I knew you were on top of it. And I'm going to just kind of go back and forth between here. Maybe I'll pipe in, maybe Jeremy will pipe in, and vice versa. I just kind of jam like we have been with these readings. So I'm going to go ahead and spotlight you, Z-Man Zillow. We're going to give you the spotlight first.
All right,
here we go.
My spotlight here. Everybody say hi to Dwayne. He's doing such a good job today. There we go.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
It's my buddy Dwayne. All right, and I'm not used to doing these in landscape, so I usually doing it stand up. Okay, so the question we had from Shelley was, on a general reading, what does the universe want me to know? Let's find out. So we'll give you a little shuffle do here. I've actually been shuffling in my palm here for the past like 5-6 minutes, so we are pretty well aggregated here. But we'll go ahead and give one more shuffle do for the camera, so you can, any hecklers in the audience that think maybe I'm maybe I've got a hermit up my sleeve or something. That ain't happening. All right.
You don't even have sleeves.
Right, then of course I immediately draw them all upside down. Swoop, swoop, and a swoop. Those are your cards. Okay. So first up, okay. And Zoom. Oh, this program, I tell you what. I probably should have used my bigger cards. All right. So this is what we got. We got La Pop here. That's the La Pop, and then we got Justice and Judgment. Interesting. So we want to know, what does the universe want you to know? So what I'm seeing here is judge, jury, executioner is sort of the theme that seems to be coming up right here. So we start off with La Pop, who's got a position of authority, most likely righteous authority, right? And then justice, and then judgment. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that there's probably a situation, Shelley, in your life right now, where you are concerned if somebody is going to be getting their just desserts. I have good news for you. That seems to be the case in the near future. If you're wondering, sort of, if you want me to do sort of a deep dive on that one, normally when I do these readings here, I think of them. I don't think of them as past, present, future. I think of them like a comic strip where time always sort of goes in this direction. So what we're seeing here is somebody that's been sort of living high in the hog here, just sort of, they've been in charge of something. There's lots of people that have been sort of taking their side in arguments, things of that nature. But he appears to be looking in this direction here. He's a little concerned about something, right? What could there be possibly to be concerned about? Could it possibly be because justice is about to be followed by judgment? So this is somebody that has been very used to having sort of the public opinion on their side, sort of used to, like getting their way. Everybody likes sort of simpering up to them. And they are very confused. They're very concerned that sort of the thing that they've been doing is going to be found out here. So that is the story I am getting from these cards. And so I believe the universe wants you to know that don't worry, even the most popular people, even the most powerful people, even the most, the hoity-toity people who have been spending all their time, taking advantage of their position of power, even they will see judgment. And I believe that may be a relevant message to something that's going on with you in your personal life, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that one. The cards you've spoken, and thank you for your question, Shelley.
That is wonderful, Zilla. That was a fantastic reading. And I think, we can see whenever you gave that reading. Do you mind just putting those cards back on the table?
So sorry.
I don't know if you already mixed them in.
I did, but you know what? I had the rest of my deck upside down as well. So like they're easy to pick out.
No, there you go.
Look, I've been doing this for a while, but don't mistake me for a professional, okay?
Because I just want to point out something really quickly. Just when I was listening, you give the reading. You focused on the archetypes here, and you also focused on what was happening right within the card. So we've got La Pape here, almost like moving towards, like pointing towards justice, right? And so immediately, if you imagine that this is a comic strip, you can immediately see kind of moving towards, pointing towards that justice taking place, right? And then you almost use the archetype of justice, knowing that, okay, this is going to happen. There's going to be a judge, there's going to be a jury, like something's going to take place, where finally we go into judgment, where they get their just desserts, right? Where they are now judged for what they do. And once again, that's taking the archetype of that card and turning that into the story. So by looking at each, comic strip, what you've really done is you've looked here, talked about the archetypes, looked at what's going in the cards to then deliver that reading. Is there anything else that you'd like to say about, I just wanted to break it down just a little bit of what I saw that you were doing.
Well, absolutely. And one other thing that I would like to point out here, as long as we're looking at some of the symbolism here, if you notice that I know it's harder to see because I use the small cards. I'll try to bring it a little closer to the camera here so you can see the other thing I've noticed, which is in Le Pape, the supplicants here have that monk hairdo thing kind of going on here, which also appears in the judgment card, which may also be cautioning us as a warning that the followers go down with the leader. So that could be part of the wisdom we might want to impart as well. So, and the thing is though, that it kind of looks like the supplicants are kind of getting the waste of it. I mean, it looks that way, but at the same time, notice everybody's been kind of stripped bare. So I think it also speaks of a situation in the end where we all become equals. We're all going to be sort of equally punished for that. But, keep in mind, when I say we, I literally mean the royal we, the folks in that situation. But I believe that's another interpretation could be coming from there as well, which is that the supplicants aren't exactly coming out of this one unscathed. And in fact,
actually, this brings me to another interesting point as far as readings go. Someone asked the other day is, how do you tell a cohesive story with the cards? And that's one of the things that's just wonderful about the Tarot de Marseille is you can find different elements in one card that are in another card, that are in another card. And so you just pointed out, well, look at their hairstyle. It's the same as these people, the followers here, as it is this person's being raised from the grave. The hair is the same. And so here you can very easily say, well, that might be the same person. And so not only is the leader brought into this, but also the followers as well. And here's the evidence for this. And so by being able to follow those elements or those characters from card to card to card, you get this cohesive story. And that's what I really think that the Tarot de Marseille has, that's unlike any other deck out there, is all of these elements that are shared between one another. So thank you so much for bringing that point here.
One more quick thing to add to that point that you just made. One more very quick thing. Another thing you can do with these cards is quadrants, okay, or halvesies. Look at the top halves of the cards as compared to the bottom halves of the cards, right? And what are we seeing? We're seeing a theme here where the top halves of the cards represent sort of the power over the people, and a part underneath is the people themselves. And so we end up with this interesting message where it's like, okay, the people are there to be ruled, the people are there to be judged, but in justice, they are absent. Justice happens without them. And so there's also a very comforting message there, which is to say that justice will come with or without our intervention. So, that's maybe that's the universe trying to let you know, hey, don't worry about it. That goofball that did the thing, they're going to get what's coming. So, and there's literally nothing they can do to stop it because they are not present in that part of the process. So.
And what's also interesting here is justice isn't blind. In a lot of depictions, justice is blindfolded. But here, she's not blindfolded.
Yeah. Well, there's a fascinating story behind that as well. But go on. I'm sorry.
Well, we'll talk about that in the main course.
Exactly. I didn't want to give away the kitchen. So yeah.
That's right. So let's pop over to Jeremy here. I've got to just switch up the setup here and bring him into the spotlight. Do you remember what that question was, Jeremy?
Yeah, I do. I got an easy question, and I can't remember. I mean, easy. It was not very complicated. It was a straightforward question. Let me just say.
Yes.
The question was straightforward. The answer may not be. But the question was, will my house sell soon? And I don't remember who.
I don't remember either, but hopefully
who asked, but if they could wave their hands
or
whatever, and you want to put them up, that's fine. For this is interesting, and I'm gonna contrast Zilla's reading with mine. For this type of question, I did a single card. I just pulled. I mean, is it gonna happen? Yes or no? Do I need to? Oh, it was Jenna. Was Jenna. Great. Well, I may have some follow-up questions to ask you if you want more detail about it. But the card firstly, I got to say that I use a very special deck. This is one of the Artisan Tarot decks, but this is this was a pre-release, so the colors are not the same as what you have, and this is a very, very, very special collector's item. So William is pulling his hair out, the fact that I'm actually showing it to you on screen. But I'm trying not to brag. I'm just saying that these are not in existence for everybody because reasons. Anyway, the card that I pulled out, I mean, let's sort of like go through an analysis. Now, I mean, because instantly you already know probably as a reader that the Sun card is an optimistic card, right? I mean, so the answer already is, yeah, your house is gonna sell. It's gonna take some time. It's gonna sell. But how do I know that from this card? Well, let's look at this card and say, like, okay, here's the sun. The sun is the major deity, right? The sun is looking absolutely indifferent to the quotidian situation of the people below. So sun is the divine, and the divine has got better things to do than to deal with your little house situation, all right? Nonetheless, rays are coming down from the sun, and those are rays of blessings. They're typically interpreted as blessings. And you see two people. And where are they? They're in front of a wall. Generally, that represents a property line, right? I mean, it's only waist high. So, I mean, it's a symbolic wall. I mean, someone could step over it. I mean, so this is like the border of a house or a picket fence, and they're outside on the lawn. And you see that there are two figures. One happens to look and have the male energy, right? And if you look closely on their face, they are really concerned and worried. And then there's another one, which is possibly female, because she has breasts. She's not wearing a top, a shirt, but she certainly does not look anxious. She's in fact reassuring or reaching out and putting her hand on the shoulder of the person who's anxious. So I take this as a sign of reassurance. Now, other people could say, oh no, she's pushing him away. She's about to push him down to the ground and step on his face, right? I mean, that's a totally logical interpretation. But given the question, I think that this is reassurance. I'm also reminded of the fact that when Joseph was dreaming, right, divinity sent him an angel. The angel was naked and they wrestled, okay, for him to get the answer. And I think that looking at this card, this person here is really an angelic messenger, because the divinity is very, 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 very busy. So they're taking care of all of the workings of the universe. They've sent a messenger, maybe a real estate agent. Yes, your place is sold, or yes, it's going to go through. So I see blessings. I see this related to your property. I see this as a reassurance. I see an additional reason to be reassured, which is, of course, that the female figure is topless, and we all know that boobs make everything better.
So one of the things that, can you hold that card back up? Because I just want to point out something, and then I've got some input too here, just jamming back and forth. What I really like here with this is that you brought an element that's found in the card, and you made that association to something in the querent's life. So you said there's this wall here, that is a property line, right? Mm-hmm. And so you were able to look at the card and then make a relation directly towards the sitter and their question. So now this card is very relevant to the question that was asked. And I also see when
this is a real estate, a buyer and a seller making a deal right outside.
That's actually what I was just going to say. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. This looks like a meeting between two people. And also, if you look at the card, I don't know if you can see, I'm going to pull up mine really quickly so I can better describe this. But if you look at, if I can find mine in my own deck here, yes. So if you look here, it looks like they are meeting on a hill that's surrounded by the grass. So this looks like they've come together. They've found a common interest or a common goal, maybe a common price, right? That works for both of them, right? Mm-hmm. And so you can see that they've come and met on this hill. That shows that there is, common interest and common benefit, right, for both parties that are involved, because they've met in this common place. And so once again, looking at these, they're coming together into a common place. And so I think, just pointing out these little details like this is how you read the cards, is paying attention to what's in them, understanding the archetypes, and then bringing that into the reality of the question. Thank you, Jeremy. I think we're going to go to back to Zilla, if that works for you.
Sure thing.
Okay, I've got to do some switch arounds here. Just
All
bear
right.
with me for a moment. And do you remember the question that was given
I do.
to
I have
you?
it written down right here. It's from Tom. Wants to know what should they be aware of next week. All
Okay,
right.
that's
So
great.
looking for a 7-day forecast, as it were. So let's see, we got here. Hello again, Dwayne. And we'll get the, oh, there we go. All right, a lot of driving. Yeah, I like that one. All right. So let's make sure the cards come out right side up this time, huh? So, all right. You know, you know. So got a big week next week then, I suppose, huh? Well, let's find out, Tom. Let's find out. One more shuffle doing those B cards. So boom, boom, and a boom. So I have a fun little rule. This works more with Sesamero than other systems, but whenever a card comes up immediately in the same in a reading where it also came up in the previous reading, especially if it comes up in the same position, that's a callback. So my decks all do callbacks. So I have a feeling the Judgment showing up is a bit of a callback itself. Also, what's interesting I'm noticing is Temperance. While not adopting the same pose as Justice in the last card, the visualization of the Temperance waters there, they sort of represent the same spot where the sword was last time. So I have a feeling what's going on here is we're seeing I'm seeing that the deck is trying to give me a callback to the previous, but is showing me Temperance in the space of Justice. So I believe that in this first off, that in and of itself, I'm focusing on that one first. That in and of itself tells me that in the grand ebb and flow of fortune, this is going to be your week. So this is one of those maybe don't get used to it kind of things, but maybe it sounds like maybe in maybe this week or this week that's ending now, maybe the prior week things were a little less in your favor. Temperance standing in for Justice tells me that maybe things are going to ease up for you a little bit there. Now with that callback having been brought to my attention, let's go ahead and expand to the full reading here. So we're starting out with Le Batelier, which the Magician card. Now the course will probably go into much more detail on this one, but I like to think of the Batelier card a little less as the magician that works with all the forces of the universe, and more on the lines of a person that is using the skills they have just to survive, which is sort of reinforcing this point I was trying to make earlier about how maybe in the great ebb and flow of things have been a little hard knock for you this week. So I have a feeling, and of course, I love also that they're both adopting sort of the same general pose. Look at the hands, look at the faces, everything is sort of looking in the other way. So it also looks like that this is a sign that everything that you have been working towards, everything that all of your plotting and your scheming and the tools that you've had. Okay, so keep in mind, by the way, that the Batelier is more of a street performer than a magician, right? But this is also classically speaking, this is a person that has had to rely on their skills that they've learned of, like dealing with people on sort of a street level as a survival tactic. So that a hustler, if you will, a person that's on the hustle, and the fact that Temperance is adopting the same pose as the hustler right now is a very good sign, because it says that fruition is coming from these efforts here. You have you're going to see some maybe some payback from all the work that you've been doing there. So your grind is being acknowledged by the universe, and look forward to some indications of that in the next week. And then, of course, we're capping things off in Judgment. Now, I did mention earlier that part of the interpretation there is callback. So if we're looking sort of at the callback from the last reading, the whole theme of the last reading was, everybody gets what's coming to them. But I think I think that callback is honestly, well, what's coming to you? Well, you've been hustling, you've been working hard. So, I think what the universe is trying to tell you about this next week is pay very close attention to the rewards you reap this week, because that is going to be a solid indicator if you should stay on that path that you're on. I feel like there's maybe some unspoken questions in there about, is this thing, something I should be doing long term? And I think what the universe is trying to show you is this week coming up is going to be your median point. This is going to be this is going to be the indicator of sort of where, this typical lie of the land is going to be. So pay close attention this week to the rewards that you reap and make that decision of whether or not you can survive on this. Because at the end of the week, at the end of that 7-day period, count it, tally it up, and make sure that that this is what you're comfortable with. And if so, continue with your hustle. So, but if it is not, then that's the answer you get as well. So I believe that's what your next 7 days look like, Tom. This looks like an opportunity to examine what it is you're doing right now, and get some nice little slice of life, nice little section of data for you to get to continue making that decision going forward. The cards have spoken, and thank you for your question.
And Zilla, I just want to add something to this, if that's okay with you.
Please do.
What I see here is coming with fruition again. What I see in these three sets of images is an elevation. And so we've got the first person here, the magician, who's on his 2 feet, who's standing, who's working on something. And then now if we go into the second image, looking at this as a comic strip, this person now has wings, right? They've almost grown wings, right? So what they're working on, they're still working on this, maybe not as hard, right? We've gone from all of this, assortment of things on the table to now we're just going to 2 pictures, right? And so almost like a lessening of those work and the growing of wings. And then if we go to this last image, this is like a fully fledged, like the angel's now flying, she's up in the air, and there's almost like an announcement that's happening. And so what I'm seeing is this growth of, like you said, fruition of this growth throughout the week, where this person is going to sprout their wings and going to be able to fly at the end. And because we can see this upward motion that's found in the cards.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Now that I look at it, this set of cards really does read like an evolution chart for a Pokemon in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like, seriously does. Like, that's amazing. And I should have followed my own advice about the quadrants, because if you just look at the top halves of the cards, that is exactly what's going on. Well observed. Well observed.
Yeah, and so, but I think once again, both of our perspectives, we said very similar things by what we found within these cards. And so I think that's really amazing that, those cards came up, and then, we're inspired to give a very similar reading off of this. And I think that's one of the reasons why tarot is so powerful.
Absolutely.
So so Zilla, thank you so much for giving us your wonderful reading here. Let's pop over to Jeremy again. And let's go to the next reading. So Jeremy, once again, I got to switch some things over here. Let's do
No
this.
problem.
Yeah, okay. So if you remember the question, and we can go from there.
I'm not sure again who asked it, but it was, should I move to Montpellier, I think?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and I did a 3-card pull. Sorry, I'm not turning my camera around and all that stuff, and Zilla's way cooler than I am, and
better looking,
and way better looking, and these are the cards. These are the cards that I got from left to right. So the question, should I move to Montpellier? And the first card I got is the Lover's card, and the Lover card, and usually when I get I'm trying to decide between X and Y, what is the answer? And this is the first card. Yes, this is kind of like a summary. Thanks for letting me know. I know what yes, you're right. This is a decision is to be made.
That's the deck stalling for time while it thinks of the answer.
It's what? Oh, yeah.
It's the deck stalling for time. You repeat the question a couple times to stall for time. Yeah.
But I mean, to me, I find, and maybe this is my own personal mistake, and I need to pay more attention in the future. Maybe this is a signal for me to pay more attention to when this card comes up first, because most of the time, if it comes up first as I'm having difficulty deciding between X and Y, my response is, yeah, no shit, that's what the card says. Okay, now I could spend more time on that. But the question is pretty straightforward, which should I move to Montpellier? And I got this one. Okay, so a lot of people would straightforward and say and interpret this as like, oh my gosh, well, that's a foolish thing to do, right? That would be the straight
almost memorized answer, right?
Almost memorized answer, right? That's the textbook answer. That would be a foolish thing to do. But if you know the history of the card, you also know that the Fool represents a medieval concept, which was touted when the cards were which was popularized when the cards were produced, which was that the Fool is often the wisest person in the room. And that was a medieval concept. And yes, someone pointed out the Fool represents a fresh start. That's right, because he's leaving to go on an adventure with his walking stick. He's also maybe leaving behind some annoyances, which are grabbing at his junk from behind. And so while the timing may not be the best for a move to Montpellier, and while it may seem kind of foolish and ridiculous, the third card shows, you're ending up in a very, very, very solid position, becoming the emperor, transitioning into becoming the emperor, the king of your own domain. That you've got success. So this turns into this. If it was this way, I would be a little bit more worried. But this became this from this original question. So I say, should you do it? Yes. I would do it with great caution, because timing is going to be very, very important for you, because once you turn your back on these things, there's no going back. You're on your way. You can only look in that one direction. You've got your stuff. You picked everything up, and you're not going to be able to cross that bridge back again. That's my interpretation.
And Jeremy, if you could hold those cards up just for a moment, because I've got I want to expand on this, exactly what you're saying. Can you reverse the order for me and the original positions that you drew them? Yes, so we've got the lovers here. We've got, or the lover, as we say in Tarot de Marseille, the Fool and the Emperor. And what I would, just expand on this a little bit, I see, if we were to go past, present, future, it's almost as if your past, or what's going on right now, is that would be, I see that this person in the middle has almost a lot of conflict going on. There's a lot of things happening in this person's life right now. There's two people almost tugging at him. There's someone shooting an arrow at him, right, from the sky. And so I think, like, right now in this present situation that you're in, you feel tugged and you feel conflict, and you just feel there's a lot going on in this situation.
Heels.
Well, and so if we go into the next card, you can see that this person is now going, right? They are taking that move, they are moving. But I think this is almost a reminder that even if we move to a new location, that doesn't immediately solve all of the problems that we had in the past, right? We still have this animal that's chasing after us and following us, along to this journey. And so I think that's just something to keep in mind, that, moving to a new location, that is going to help us have a new start. That's going to start a new life for us. But remember that some of those troubles or some of those things that are happening in the past, they're going to also, come along with us. Yeah. But the good thing is that last card of the Emperor, that transition, of growth, right? Of being king of your own domain. That's the eventual transformation that's taking place. And so the real question is now, how do you go from being in this position where there's conflict, strife, and there's issues? How can you now, how does this move now help you become this emperor, right? The final goal of being the king of your domain. And so, I see movement here. Now the question is, how can you become the emperor once you make that move?
There's also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go, you go, Zilla. I was going to ask the querent something. So
okay. I was also going to throw in there that one of the sort of areas we haven't been touching on quite as much is some of the traditional numerology and the ways you can use the numerology. And I think it's very fascinating that we're transitioning from 0 to 4. All right, because 0, of course, uncertainty, could be anything, that sort of thing. But we're transitioning to 4, which is that's the number of normalcy, right? That's solid base, everything's back where it needs to be. So I believe also that by finishing things off with the Emperor, looking in the same direction as the 4, is the card's trying to say this will be your new normal. This will be your new normal. So that's a good sign as well. I figured I'd throw that one in there as well.
Yeah, and we also start from the 6, and then we go to the 0 of starting over, and then we go to the 4 of a rebuilding, right? And so you almost have this contraction and then an expansion back up to where you want to be, right? And so once again, signifying that or symbolizing that, starting over is going to take you from the 6 where you are now down to a 0, and then you're going to be able to climb back up, which is going to, if we were to put a timetable on that, it's going to take you a long time, or it's going to take time to get back to that
exactly 604 years. Yes, that's.
Can I ask? And I don't mean to put anybody on the spot. So if the querent doesn't want to join us, that's okay. But it would be interesting to hear. Maybe they could tell us a little bit more about what's going on in their lives, and we could find out whether or not our interpretations matched up with
and because that's, I think, something else, if you can wave your hand, but that's something to consider as well. A lot of these readings that we're doing right now, we're almost in a vacuum. Right? We've got a question, and that's all we've got. Like
we don't know
really
you.
Know
we don't know your situation.
And these are things we talk about in the course. Like, this is really hard to just say what the cards are saying to us, right? Because we don't have any of that context. And so that's something that you will have when you are doing readings, right? They're not going to be so much like this. You mentioned
that. You mentioned that in the beginning. I mean, a 16-year-old is not going to have the same type of, and it's really important.
Yeah.
And so I don't see any comments on that. So what I would like to do, we've actually got some giveaways from Artisan Tarot and also from the Temple of Miriam. And then I just want to talk about our course a little bit more. And then we will open it up to chit chat. So I'm going to share my screen here just because I want you to be familiar with Z-Manzilla, with the Temple of Miriam. So I'm going to actually put some links here in the chat room. This one is to a free anti-evil eye bracelet from the Temple of Miriam. So you can go to this website right now. You just pay for shipping, and Jeremy will package that up and get this free anti-evil eye protective bracelet to you. He also has a fantastic book if you're interested in learning more about the evil eye. It's really fantastic. You can go there and check that out. Now, you've been seeing this entire presentation, us using these smaller cards. Our Jean Noblet cards. These are the trump cards that we've been reading with, and we're giving these away for free as well on our website. All you once have to do is pay for shipping on those. So I've just put in a link where you can get this deck shipped to you, and I believe it's $8 for the shipping, and then you get these standard cards, and these cards are actually the same cards that are in our full-size deck. So if you go, oh, I kind of want to test these out, I want to see what they're like before we get the full-size deck, you can do that right here. And we've got people just ordering them. Awesome. So these are 2 freebies that you can do right now. Now, on top of that, Zilla has a wonderful TikTok channel. And so if you want to see more about, how he reads the cards, he actually has the Sesamero which is what he uses, as well as the Charity Marseille and other decks. I'm just going to give you his TikTok channel as well. And so this goes directly to Z Manzilla. And then if you're interested in learning more about him, I'm also going to share his website with you right here as well. So these are just great resources for you to stay in touch with us, for you to get some freebies that we just want to say thank you for joining us. And then I also want to bring this back around because a few things that I didn't touch on that I do want to touch on just about the course in general. So whenever you purchase the course, you are going to get access to this online guidebook. I'm going to have to sign in again, but you're going to get access to our online guidebook here, which includes these 3 parts that we were just talking about: the trumps cards, the storytelling fundamentals, and how to answer questions. And then we're going to have live events very similar to what we did right here. It's going to be a little bit more structured. And then we're going to go into breakout sessions, kind of what you just saw here, where you all can practice giving these readings with one another, come back to the main room and share that with the entire class. It's going to be a ton of fun. These are happening on these dates: Saturday, September 10th, Sunday, September 11th, Saturday, September 17th, and Sunday, September 18th. So this is over 2 weeks, and it begins at the same time, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. And if you're in the UK, that's in the evening. We've tried to, schedule this so that pretty much, everybody but sadly Australia is kind of out of luck. But we've tried to time this in a way that hopefully will work for the majority of people here. And so these are going to be about 2-hour classes where we're really going into detail about the things that we've just discussed. Now, on top of that, you're also going to get the replays from the courses. So like what we did just now, we're going to record them, and then we're going to put them up into our replay area. And I haven't announced this yet, but back in October, we did the weekend workshops, which I think was around $110. And we recorded that. And if you buy the course right now, we're going to include the entire weekend workshop. So you can see here, we've got Marilyn doing a fantastic video about the tarot history. So you can learn more about that. Here I am talking about storytelling, which we're going to go into even more detail in our live sessions. We've got Thessar here, who's talking about an open reading and how to kind of connect those elements together. We've got Jeremy, who talks about some numerology and some other approaches to reading the tarot. And then down here, this is available just to get it all in one place, where we talk about each deck and the creation of our recreations and restorations of these 3 Tarot de Marseille decks. Hey, look, we've got the same shirt on. Hey, I didn't plan that. So this is everything that is included whenever you purchase this. And so what's really nice, really about the online guidebook, is when we're going through this material, you don't have to scurry and take notes because it's all there for you. And then this is kind of a review for you in the classes, and then also to take those live questions and answers and discussions and practice reading, which I really think is the best way for you to learn. Now, what we've done here for this, this is going to be $179. That's going to increase to $197 once the courses start. But right now, this is an introductory price at $179, and you're going to get access to everything that we've been talking about today, plus all the recordings, plus the live sessions, etc. We'll also be holding more things like this that you're welcome to be a part of. And throughout the year, we're going to also be doing group sessions like this, where if you have paid for the course, you're going to get to join those and hang out with us just like we did here. We also have a 3 payments for $60 if you want to break it up that way. You're welcome to pay for that however works for you. And that's just going to artisantarot.com/courses, and you can see all of the information and watch a video to once again see what's inside of this. So once again, you'll get the online guidebook, which includes the trump card, storytelling fundamentals, how to answer questions. You get this live class, and last but not least, you'll get to join our private community where we will be doing these live sessions. And that brings us to the last point, our Discord community. We have a really awesome community of people just like you who are posting about the tarot, talking about the tarot, and you can join us. It's free to join, and it's a really great resource if you've got a question on how to read the cards. You can talk to me, you can talk to Jeremy, you can talk to Zilla. We're all there hanging out. And so I'm going to give you a link to our Discord community as well. And I'm going to post that in the chat room that you can see, hopefully, right now. So this is our Discord chat room. And I'm going to share my screen really quickly just so you can see how this works, because Discord, if you're not familiar with it, it can kind of be a little daunting. So this is what the Discord chat room looks like. So you can see right now we're in the Artisan Tarot group. And here we've got different chat areas where you can talk about different things. So here we have an introduce yourself, or people say, hey, I'm from here. And we talk about, you know, we can just learn a little bit about you. We've got the general chat area where we talk about, you know, we can see actually Alex right here who joined us today. He's talking about some books that he's read, and we're talking about how to read the cards. We've got this tarot area where I will sometimes post, I'll say, hey, this is a spread that recently came up. So this was right here. Will I get my work visa? And then you can see people have been discussing how they would interpret these cards. And so this is just an awesome way to talk about the tarot. We've got this courses section, which we'll be posting in once those go on. And we've got a promotions area, which is really a great way for you to join the community and share the things that you're doing. So like Meg just posted her YouTube channel that she said she just got 900 subscribers, which is a huge accomplishment. So congrats on that. But so this is just a really cool place to hang out. Now, Jeremy also has a Discord channel, which is right here, the Temple of Miriam. And I will post the link in a moment, and we won't get out of this, but and he's got, you know, tarot channel, bibliomancy, hoodoo, weekly spell where he posts a spell every single week, which you can learn. These are really fascinating spells. And of course, Z-Manzilla also has an awesome chat room where he talks about his art. He talks about, you know, all of these different things that you can chat with him directly as well. And so we've got some new members here, and you can just pop in here and see this. Yes, Z-Man.
Yeah, I was just going to say the part you were just showing that I especially wanted to call attention to.
Yes, please.
I just started doing one-on-one readings through my Ko-Fi. And I only have 8 slots left right now, but I'm offering special introductory pricing until the end of the month. If you check out using code PandaCub, you will get 20% off of a reading. So be sure to check that out. Yeah.
And actually, I need to copy this invite code really quickly. Invite people. And then we're just going to copy this right here, and then I will post that in the chat room so people can see that. So that's the link to Zilla's Discord server, and then I will also post the link to the Temple of Miriam Discord server. So this is just, once again, you know, we're very open. We're happy to talk about the tarot. We're happy to share our knowledge if you have any questions. And yeah, come hang out with us. It's really fun. You know, we're in this because we really enjoy reading the cards. We really enjoy sharing these things with everyone here. And hopefully today you were able to, you know, really see our energy and see how much we really love the tarot and readings and talking about how you read the cards. And, you know, just with like Zilla and Jeremy, we just hang out like this all the time. I recently visited them, and it's like, oh, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? How would you answer this? And so this is, you know, really our idea to open this up to all of you. And then lastly, I will post just the link to our courses. So if you are interested in that and learning more about how to read these cards and hanging out with us and running your questions by us, you can do that right there. It's just artisantarot.com/courses. So now I would just want to open this up to discussion really quickly. Does anybody have any questions about anything? We're an open book here. Does anybody have any questions about anything that we've talked about today? And I'd be happy to answer those. So Tom asks if we will be doing any courses on reading the pips. That's a great question, Tom. Right now we're focusing on the trump cards, but who knows what the future might bring, but it's a little bit too early to think about that quite yet. But that's a great question.
I'd like to contribute that the answer is a definite maybe. But,
Yes.
what I will say is that I've actually taken similar courses. Actually, I believe Dr. Jeremy taught me how to read the pips. He was able to do it in a relatively little amount of time. So, it you know I think one of the things what we're trying to do here is reading pips and courts in Tarot de Marseille. It goes a lot smoother than it does if you used to Rider Waite, because Rider Waite, every single one of those cards has so much baggage and so much history behind it that you have to learn the individual cards. Pips and courts in the Tarot de Marseille is more of a system, and you learn one system and it applies across the whole thing. So, it sounds like something where it probably wouldn't be a whole course. It'd probably just be a seminar. I'm just spitballing. But the point is, if you want to learn pips and courts, one way or another, we'll point you in the right direction. So, come join the Discord, join the discussion,
Yeah.
and we'll make sure that we put you on the right path.
And I don't want to say too much, but we do have something coming out in the not too distant future that will talk about the pip cards. But I don't want to talk about that quite yet, because we're working every day on it, and we're going to announce it hopefully in the next month or soon. So we're working on it. So Diana just asked a question about reversals. Like in the Tarot de Marseille, do you typically read with reversals? And I would say that traditionally, Tarot de Marseille cards are not read with reversals. Now, if you're used to a Rider-Waite Smith type of system and you want to apply that to the Tarot de Marseille, there's nobody to tell you that you can't do that. But really, whenever you're reading the Tarot de Marseille, you're looking at the elements that are found within the cards, and we talked about this. You're talking about how the characters look. You're talking about, with the movement that's happening within the cards, and perhaps the archetypes as well. And so because you're really studying how one thing moves to another and moves to another, like the wings, for example, the Pokemon reference, right? If some cards are upside down and you're doing it, it's much harder to read in that fashion. And so that's why a lot of times the Tarot de Marseille aren't read with reversals, because then it takes away from the ability to read in that type of style. Now, is it wrong? Can you read that way? You can read however you want to read. That's really up to you.
Yeah. Rev Diana brings up a good point too, which is that if you do choose to read reversals, it does give you more options as far as things like facings and whatnot. Now, I generally agree with that. And in general, I also really enjoy the versatility of Tarot de Marseille, because there are so many different ways you can read it. If you want to do reversals, you can. If if you want to do open reading styles, you want to do expansion, contraction, and whatever you want to do. What I will bring up though, is something to consider. Is in my opinion, at least, a deck that can do proper reversals. The important part is the card backing. Okay, the card backing has to read the same upside down as it does right side up. If it doesn't do that, then it's already full stop, in my opinion, at least. Now, some TDM decks do have a back like that, and some don't. And obviously, this is a personal arbitrary rule. You don't have to follow it, but I feel it's somewhat.
For example, in our Dodal deck, you can see
Yeah.
it's all one direction. Yeah.
Right. So the Dodal deck would be a much better deck to for not doing reversals, because you can. And incidentally, that's also why you look at most, Rider-Waite inspired decks. The backs are always, they read the same upside down as right side up. So, but
and
the thing
another,
is, what I was going to say, what I was going to say was, in general, just the thing with Tarot de Marseille is, the deck itself is not going to tell you how to read it. It is a secular deck. There's, you are able to apply whatever symbolism, whatever intercession, whatever divinity or not, or lack of divinity, whatever you want. You are able to apply that, when you bond with your deck. The deck works with you. So if you like to do reversals, the deck's not going to say no. Okay, so you do what you want to do.
And something else, just because I think the Rider system is such a prevalent system. One of the reasons why I like the Tarot de Marseille so much is the images are much simpler. And so I think a card that a lot of people might know is the Magician, for example. And so here it's very clear that you can see, for example, the cups, you can see the wand, you can see the elements that are within. You've got like a stick here, you've got a ball here, you've got these elements that are also found within the suits. And so this is like a very stripped down version. Let me just show you here, a very stripped down version of the rider deck. And so we don't have the infinity sign over the character's head here. That's pulled away from that. And so
Stop that. Pull up the Three of Swords on the Tarot de Marseille, and then show them the Three of Swords from the Rider Waite. And
I actually don't have a rider weight deck here.
all right, well, I'll find a Rider Waite with Three of Swords. Someone's got to have it. But like,
You know, I mean, that's how much I
got
don't
one.
use.
I got one right here.
okay,
You want the
good.
Three of Swords. All right.
Okay, hold on, I've
All
got
right,
to find it here.
All right. I got you. I got you. The Three of Swords. All right.
10.
I mean, you're going off about magicians, which I get it. It's very small, but let's bring them two very different.
Yes. So here's
There
the Three
you
of
go.
Swords.
All right.
Okay.
And here is your Three of Swords in the Rider Waite.
All right. Now we're talking. Okay. So I
Yes,
think
so you can see it's
you
a
can
very
see how they're
stripped
very,
down.
very different, right? And
Yeah.
in the Rider
okay.
Waite, the Three of Swords carries with it its own meaning of trauma and people not getting along, and it's awful and it's bad and blah 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 blah. You can see that in the Tarot de Marseille, it is just merely an illustration absent of all of that baggage, that emotional baggage. And the
Right,
way Tarot de Marseille is read is mostly in context with the other cards, as well as the numerological symbology, as opposed to the Rider Waite.
Right. And so in here, you've got this sword that now is replaced by a blossoming flower. And this isn't just a bud of a flower, this is a completely blossomed flower. And so if you come and look at let me see if I can find so this is another thing so here we've got the 8, and you can see this is a small little flower. All right, so if this were to come up next to this in a reading, let me just find these 2 flowers, right? So what does this tell us, right? So now this is possible, expansion or possible growth, right? Well, let's flip that around. There we go. That's possible expansion or a possible growth with the flowers. And so you look at one and you compare it to the other, and you can say, well, there's even though the numbers are declining, right? It goes from this 8 to the 2. There's growth within this, right? And so that's how I would be reading these cards, instead of looking at the pictures and telling me, well, I mean, we are looking at the pictures, but instead of looking at a swords with hearts through it, right? You get this image and this image, which is going to give you a different type of reading. And then you're studying what's happening with the swords, what's happening with the flowers, what's happening with this stuff, that then gives you a reading based on that.
Yeah. So it's important to remember too that the with Tarot de Marseille, it's an open flowing system. It's very wide open to interpretations, and it can go all over the place. Keep in mind that when we're dealing with the Rider Waite, we're dealing with a conscious effort, an attempt to codify these things.
Yes,
and sort of take away some of that open choice kind of stuff. So they're 2 very different systems. I mean, and it really does come down to what works best for you. I mean, in many aspects, the Rider Waite system sort of feeds you a lot of your lines. It sort of says, okay, well, you don't have to think about it as much if you just memorize what each and every one of these cards mean. You don't have to think about it so much. It occurs to you. Tarot de Marseille does require a little more sort of flexibility, interpretation, bend like a reed in the wind kind of stuff. So,
and Shad says here, hold on a minute, I just lost Tarot de Marseille is more intuitive to me, because if you look at the Three of Swords, immediately it's heartbreak. Where else, you can go other places with that, but that's pretty much in the direction that you're going to go. But the Three of Swords and the Tarot de Marseille, that opens it up to a lot of different interpretations.
You could be getting a message about 3. You could be getting a message about sword. You could there was a school of thought that each of the suits also retain their They're elemental properties. So, there's speaking of air, speech, communication becomes important as well. All of the symbolism of a sword, tools, there's so many places you can go. But
Coins, right? You pay for something,
right.
You pay, or you get something that you need from that, or
It's material gain. It's it's an earth element, so it's also a reference to health, prosperity, physical stuff like that. There's all these interpretations. In right away, there's pentacles, and you know what pentacles are. So like
yeah. And one of the things that I love studying about the Tarot de Marseille is seeing, I am familiar with the writer, but it's seeing where some of those things are taken from. And so I think if you understand the Tarot de Marseille, it really gives you almost a foundational understanding of where the tarot came from. And if you want to read with the Tarot de Marseille, that's wonderful. But if you then want to say, okay, I understand, I've got this foundational understanding of this, let's apply this to a different system. But once again, I have not found any other system that has, like the wings, for example. Immediately you can see that person's on the ground, it moves up and it moves up. Like those associations, or the people, right? There's a person here and here, and what happened in between to those people, because they're in the same position, but now there's an angel above them, where there was a pope above. Now they're being judged when before they were a follower, right? So like you can see this movement between the characters and elements and these transformations that, for me, open your mind to be even more creative. And speaking of that line, I'm not sure, I've got to find this really quickly just on our blog, but there's a fantastic book called The Castle of Crossed Destinies. And what this book is about is basically storytelling with the Tarot de Marseille. And so what he's done is, to write the book, he laid down a spread of all of the cards. And so every single card is used in a series of short stories where he gives little anecdotes, or he gives little words of wisdom within each story that is told. And so I'm just going to link everybody to this book here in the chat room. But this is a great start, a great place to understand, how do I link cards together? How does one thing symbolize something? Like, for example, he's got a great thing in his book where he says there was one card, and I think that there was this card, and like a prince had to go through the forest to meet someone, and this card here became a bridge to link one person to the next person, right? And so just looking at this now, this going straight through, I go, oh, maybe this is a bridge, maybe this forms a connection from one thing to another thing. Oh, that's a great way to look at this card. Or you might look at like this card, for example, and you might think, well, this is a fence. You've seen those like picket fences, where with the crosses. Maybe this is a fence, maybe this is a blockage, and there's lots of foliage around it that you can't get through it. It's really dense and thick, right? And you go, oh, well, that's a really interesting way to look at these. I never thought of seeing these cards in that way. And so it's just a fantastic book, and it's very inexpensive to just get your wheels turning of how you can use these cards in readings.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think we've gone for 2 hours now, and doesn't feel like I've been having so much fun I didn't even realize it. So I think we will call this a day for you, call this a night for me. It's already 10 p.m. But I just want to really sincerely thank everybody for joining us, and hopefully we were to accomplish those 3 things that I set out at the beginning. Was hopefully you got something from this that you can now start using in your own readings. I really hope that you were able to glean some knowledge from us. Second, I really hope that you were able to see how these cards can be used in real readings. We had people ask questions, we gave you answers, and really I hope that you were able to see how these can be applicable to you and in your readings. If you've never explored the Tarot de Marseille, maybe this will open up some new possibilities to you. And then finally, I hope everybody had fun, because you can see me smiling throughout this entire time. I've been having a blast just talking about tarot with 2 of my good friends here. And so I just want to thank Jeremy for you joining us and for imparting your wisdom on us. And thank you, Azima and Zilla, for sharing your wisdom. I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot of both of you in our courses, and hopefully in more things that we are putting out in the future. So
Excellent.
thank you so much for being a part of this.
Right. After party at Jeremy's house. So.
That's right. I'll fly over there. So yeah, and then if you have any questions, please reach out. It's just about the course, about the cards in general. It's william@artisantarot.com. Very easy, william@artisantarot.com. I'm happy to answer any and all questions that you might have. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us. We're going to call that a night. We hope to see you in our upcoming course.